Everyone was smiling until a homeless black man walked into the church in the middle of the wedding aisle. Gasps echoed. People turned. The groom's face went pale. And then, the man whispered something that froze the entire room. The bride looked at the groom, then slowly walked toward the homeless man. What she did next, it changed everything and left the world speechless. The grand hall of St. Matthew's Church was glowing with light and luxury. Tall stained glass windows cast kaleidoscopic patterns onto polished marble floors. Rows of pristine white roses adorned every pew. The soft hum of a string quartet carried the excitement and elegance of the day. Everyone was waiting for the bride. Amelia Hart, beloved daughter of a local philanthropist, was finally marrying Nicholas Grant, a successful tech entrepreneur with charm, influence, and a spotless reputation. Every seat was taken. Politicians, CEOs, influencers, all dressed in designer labels and designer smiles. Inside the bridal suite, Amelia stood in her gown, glowing, but oddly distant. She stared into the mirror, touching the lace on her veil, like it wasn't quite real. Behind her, her best friend Lisa fussed with the dress. "You okay?" Lisa asked, catching Amelia's faraway look. Amelia smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's just, this is everything I planned. Everything I thought I wanted, it's just happening so fast." Lisa gave her hand a squeeze. "You love him, right?" Amelia nodded. "Yes, I think so." But before Lisa could answer, a knock came at the door. A panicked usher peeked in, breathless. Something's happening. You need to come see this." Moments later, Amelia, flanked by Lisa and her coordinator, stood in the hallway looking down into the church. All heads had turned toward the back entrance. The music had stopped. The door had opened. And in walked a man no one recognized, at least not at first. He was tall, though his frame looked fragile. Dark-skinned, graying hair under a faded cap, and clothes worn beyond threadbare. A duffel bag hung over his shoulder, heavy with belongings that rattled softly. His eyes were tired but alert, focused, and as he walked slowly between the pews, silence replaced ceremony. The pastor froze. Ushers looked uncertain, murmurs rippled. A few guests cringed or reached for their phones. Some looked to Nicholas, expecting him to react. And he did. His jaw tightened, his eyes widened. The blood drained from his face. Amelia watched as her fiancé slowly stepped back from the altar, visibly shaken. Nicholas muttered something under his breath, but not before the microphone caught. It can't be him." Whispers surged like a wave. The man kept walking. Not aggressive, not lost, not mumbling. Just walking, steady, toward the front. When he reached the third pew, he stopped, placed his bag gently on the ground and looked up, straight at Nicholas. Now everyone was standing. Amelia descended the aisle toward them, Lisa trailing behind. As she approached the stranger, her eyes narrowed with curiosity and confusion, and then shock. She recognized him. "Mr. Jacobs?" He turned to her with a surprised but gentle smile. "You remember me?" "I do," she said slowly. "You used to sweep the sidewalks outside my school when I was a kid. You'd give out candy on holidays." He chuckled. "Still my favorite memories." Nicholas stepped down from the altar, voice quivering with a forced calm. "Amelia, please, let's go back. This man, he doesn't belong here." But Amelia didn't move. "Why is he here, Nick?" "I don't know," Nicholas snapped, though his voice betrayed something deeper. Fear. Mr. Jacobs looked at Nicholas, the warmth gone from his face. He reached slowly into his coat and pulled out a crumpled photograph. He held it out. It was old and slightly torn, but clear enough to show 5 teenage boys laughing, holding red plastic cups, standing over something or someone, curled on the ground. "You remember this?" Mr. Jacobs asked softly. Nicholas didn't answer. Amelia took the photo from his hand. Her eyes darted between the image and her fiancé. Her hand trembled. "Is that you?" she whispered. Nicholas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. It was a long time ago. I was in high school. It was just a prank. We didn't mean to. A prank? Mr. Jacobs' voice cut cleanly through the silence. You and your friends tied me to a bench, poured paint on me, made a video, laughed, and left me there. Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman whispered, "Oh my God, I remember that video. It went viral years ago. It was everywhere." Nicholas was sweating now. I didn't post it. We were just being stupid kids. I regretted it. I didn't even recognize him. Amelia stared at him like she had never seen him before. You never told me this, she said. Her voice was low, hurt. It wasn't important, Nicholas barked. I've changed. Not important, Mr. Jacobs repeated. That day cost me my job, my apartment, my dignity. I couldn't even walk into a store without someone pointing, laughing, calling me names from your video. Silence fell again. Even the musicians had quietly packed their instruments. I came here, Mr. Jacobs said, not to destroy your wedding, not for revenge, but because I saw Amelia's face in the paper, and I remembered the little girl who offered me hot cocoa on Christmas Eve when no one else would even look at me. He turned to Amelia. You're about to marry a man who hasn't looked at me since. Until today. Tears slipped down Amelia's cheeks. Her fingers clenched the photograph. Nicholas tried again. Please, Amelia, I was a kid. I made a mistake. That's not who I am anymore. Amelia stepped closer, voice trembling but fierce. Then why didn't you ever apologize? Nicholas hesitated. I didn't think it would matter. But it did, Amelia whispered. Mr. Jacobs began to turn. I've said what I came to say. I'll go now. But Amelia caught his arm gently. No. Stay. She turned toward the stunned guests, her veil catching a slant of sunlight. I don't know what this means yet, she said slowly. But I can't pretend this didn't happen, not today, not like this. Nicholas looked panicked. We have 300 people here, Amelia. We've spent a year planning this. She shook her head. And it took a stranger walking in with the truth to show me who I'm really marrying. The pastor lowered his Bible. The crowd stood in silence as Amelia looked at Mr. Jacobs, then at her father, then back at Nicholas. I need to think, she said softly. But I know this. If I walk down that aisle right now, it won't be for love. It'll be for the lie. She turned to Mr. Jacobs. Will you come with me, just outside? He nodded. Together, the bride in white and the homeless man in rags walked slowly toward the doors. As the heavy doors opened and light spilled into the church, Nicholas stood at the altar, still, speechless. Outside St. Matthew's Church, the air was cool and heavy with early spring. The clouds above parted in slow ripples, letting golden light break through. Ironic, considering what had just unfolded inside. Amelia sat on the stone steps, her wedding gown cascading like a river of white silk around her. Her heels had been kicked off. Her bouquet lay discarded on the railing beside her. Beside her sat Mr. Jacobs, the man who had once been ridiculed, filmed, and forgotten. Now he was a living reminder that the past never stays buried, no matter how many roses and vows are placed over it. Neither of them spoke at first. A few guests peeked through the open doors, but no one dared follow. The entire church seemed frozen in some sacred suspension, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Finally, Amelia broke the silence. You knew he was marrying me? Jacobs nodded once. I saw your photo in the paper. The engagement, announcement. I recognized your name, Amelia Hart. I never forgot. Her eyes flicked to him. So why now? I wasn't coming to stop a wedding, he said calmly. I was coming to stop a lie. Amelia looked down, running her fingers along the old photograph again. The faces of 5 boys, laughing, mocking, ruining a man's dignity for a few seconds of digital fame. You kept this all these years? Mr. Jacobs reached into his coat pocket again and unfolded the second thing he had brought, a folded, yellowed piece of paper. Carefully, he handed it to her. It was a note, written in a young girl's handwriting. "Merry Christmas, Mr. J. You make the sidewalk cleaner, but you also make the world brighter. Thank you for always being kind. Amelia H." Amelia's breath caught. "I wrote this when I was, 11? 12, he said softly. "I kept it, along with the card you once taped to a hot cocoa cup. Those were the only things that reminded me not everyone had turned their backs." Her eyes shimmered. "I'm sorry for what happened to you. You were the only one who ever said that." They sat in silence again. Then she asked the question she had feared since the moment she saw Nicholas freeze inside the church. "Did he ever come back? Say anything to you after that video?" Jacobs shook his head slowly. "Not once. None of them did. They uploaded the video, laughed at the comments, watched the views rise, but no apology, no remorse." Amelia bit her lip. "He always said he volunteered at shelters in college, that he cared about people. Maybe he thought he could cover the guilt with a few good deeds," Jacob said. "Maybe he thought the internet forgets." She looked out across the parking lot where luxury cars were lined up in rows. The sound of heels on stone echoed behind her, and Lisa appeared at the door, holding Amelia's coat. "I figured you might be cold," Lisa said gently, draping it over her shoulders. "Thanks," Amelia whispered. Lisa looked between her and Mr. Jacobs, lips pressed in a tight line. "Everyone's waiting." Amelia nodded. "Let them wait." Lisa hesitated, then crouched down beside her friend. "You okay?" Amelia didn't answer right away. She turned to Mr. Jacobs. "Tell me, what happened after that day? How did everything fall apart?" Jacobs sighed, eyes fixed on some invisible point in the past. "I worked nights at a local bakery, nothing fancy, but it paid rent. I was clean, sober, and trying to get a second chance after a rough patch in my 20s. That video, it was everywhere within a day. By the weekend, my boss fired me, said he didn't want his store associated with that kind of attention. My landlord didn't renew my lease, said I was drawing the wrong kind of people." He exhaled. "I tried getting work, but everyone had seen it. I became a punchline." Amelia swallowed hard. "How long were you on the streets?" "About 6 years, Lisa gasped. 6 years? No one helped?" I stopped asking. People didn't look at me. They looked through me. Amelia looked at him. Until today. He nodded. And then she asked something even deeper. "Do you forgive him?" There was a pause. He stared at her, not with anger, but with exhaustion, like a man who had carried too many miles in his soul. "I forgave him years ago. Not for him, for me. Hate's a heavy thing to drag when you've already lost everything else." Lisa blinked away tears. Amelia stood slowly, her gown catching on the uneven stone. "What do I do now?" she whispered. Not to him, not to Lisa, but to the universe. Mr. Jacobs looked up at her. "You already did it. You listened." Suddenly another voice came from behind them. Nicholas. His perfect tuxedo wrinkled, his face pale, his eyes hollow. "Amelia, please, let me talk to you. Alone." She didn't move, but she didn't stop him either. Nicholas stepped closer. His voice was pleading. "I was a kid. A stupid kid. I was following the others. I didn't understand what we were doing to him. And when it blew up, I panicked. I told myself it wasn't that bad. I buried it." Amelia stared. "You buried it," she repeated. He reached for her hand. She pulled it back. "I wanted to tell you," he said. "So many times. But I was afraid you'd look at me like you are now." "Like what?" "Like you don't know me." Amelia looked into his eyes, and for the first time saw what was beneath them. Not just guilt, shame. "I don't know you," she said gently. "Not the part of you that could see a man suffer and pretend it didn't happen." Nicholas shook his head, desperate. "I'm not that guy anymore. I swear, please, don't throw this away. Don't throw us away." Lisa stepped between them. "Nick, maybe you should go back inside." Nicholas hesitated, then looked at Mr. Jacobs with something resembling regret. But he couldn't bring himself to speak to him directly. He turned and walked back toward the church, alone. Amelia watched him go, then turned to Jacobs. "Would you come with me again?" "Where?" "To the garden." They walked side by side through the narrow pathway, beside the church. Spring blossoms were blooming along the walls, daffodils, hydrangeas, silent witnesses to a broken moment of truth. They sat on a wooden bench. "You changed my life once," Jacob said quietly. Amelia blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "You gave me a card when I had no one, and today you gave me something even more valuable. A voice." She smiled faintly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And you gave me something too," she whispered, "the truth. No one else at that wedding saw me hesitate. No one else would have stopped me from making the biggest mistake of my life." The wind stirred the flowers. "Do you have a place to go?" she asked. "I make do." "Not anymore. You're coming with me. We'll get you help, a room, a real bed." He looked stunned. "Why?" "Because I was raised to believe people matter. And today, you reminded me of who I want to be." She pulled out her phone and dialed her father's number. "Dad," she said softly, "the wedding's off, but there's someone here I want you to meet." Mr. Jacobs looked at her. For the first time in years, someone had called him someone. 2 months had passed since the wedding that never was. What the tabloids called the aisle incident had spread like wildfire across social media. Someone had recorded it, of course they had. The moment a homeless black man interrupted a millionaire's son's wedding to tell the truth, and the bride chose to walk away. It had gone viral, but the internet only ever saw the surface. They didn't see what happened afterward. They didn't see the woman in the white dress walking away, not out of anger, but with purpose. Or the way she held the man's arm beside her as if she had known him her whole life. And they certainly didn't see what became of either of them next. 2 months later, in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city, a small 2-bedroom guest house had been converted into something special. The walls, once bare, were now filled with sunlight and soft, earthy colors. The air always smelled of brewed coffee, books, and something warm, something new. Inside, Mr. Elijah Jacobs stood in the small kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His beard was trimmed now. His clothes fit him. His posture, once slouched and unsure, had changed. Still humble, but stronger. A man reclaiming space in the world. Amelia Hart sat across from him at the round table, typing notes on her laptop. "How's the budget looking for the food drive?" Elijah asked. "Better," she said, smiling. "Thanks to your idea of partnering with the local bakery chain. They're donating leftover goods twice a week." "People waste more than they realize," he said softly, pouring her tea. She accepted the mug. "And others live on what the world throws away." He nodded. "That was me for a long time. Now it wasn't." After that day at the church, Amelia hadn't just helped him find shelter. She had gone further. She used her voice, her name, her resources, to open a door that had been shut to him for nearly a decade. A friend of her father's ran a community program for displaced adults, and through it, Elijah had gotten housing, counseling, and, most importantly, a chance to speak. And what he said changed lives. A week after the wedding, Amelia invited Elijah to speak at a local college panel titled "The Forgotten Faces of the City." Students who had walked past the homeless without a second glance now sat in stunned silence as Elijah described what it felt like to become invisible. "I wasn't just hungry," he said. "I was erased." One student in the back cried silently. Another walked up to him afterward and said, "I saw that video. I laughed at it in high school. I'm so sorry." And with a quiet grace, Elijah had responded, "Then learn from it. That's how we all grow." That event snowballed into others. Soon Elijah was being invited to churches, youth centers, and city events, sharing his story not as a victim, but as a survivor. A man who fell not because of addiction or laziness, but because cruelty was easier to broadcast than kindness. Nicholas, the groom. Nicholas never made a public statement, but behind closed doors he was falling apart. His father, the wealthy real estate mogul, was livid, not because of what he had done to Elijah, but because the wedding scandal had cost him 3 corporate contracts. "You embarrass this family," he shouted in one meeting. "You let some beggar humiliate you." Nicholas sat there silently, not defending himself, not arguing, because deep down he knew. He had done worse than embarrass the family. He had buried a man with his silence, and buried his own soul along with it. One night, unable to sleep, Nicholas drove across town and parked outside the community center, where Elijah now volunteered. He didn't go in. He just sat there, watching through the window as Elijah handed out boxed meals with a smile. A small child tugged on his coat and gave him a drawing. Elijah thanked her, folded it gently, and placed it in his pocket like it was treasure. Nicholas stayed in his car, tears sliding down his face. For the first time, he wasn't crying for being caught. He was crying for what he'd become. Back to the present. Amelia stood in front of a classroom filled with high school students. Elijah sat at the side watching her speak. 2 months ago, I was preparing for a wedding. I had a dress, flowers, cake, the whole fairy tale. But one thing was missing truth. The students were silent. Truth walked in late that day, worn clothes, tired eyes, but it brought more honesty than I had seen in the entire relationship I was about to commit to. She turned to Elijah. Because of him, I walked away from a man who looked perfect and toward a man who reminded me what humanity looks like. Applause rose, genuine and heartfelt. Later that evening, Elijah and Amelia sat beneath a street lamp outside the center, sipping tea from paper cups. "I used to sit on this sidewalk every night," he said. "People would throw change. Some threw insults, but you handed me a sandwich and a card." Amelia smiled. "And you kept it for years. You were the only one who saw me." She looked at him quietly. "Do you ever think, maybe, you were meant to walk into that church?" He chuckled. "I think God has a strange sense of timing." They laughed, but there was something deeper behind the moment. A calmness, a peace that comes only after a storm. 1 year later, the community center launched a new program for formerly homeless individuals, the Second Look Project. Elijah was the face of it. He stood beside the mayor at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Cameras flashed, but this time not to mock, not to go viral, but to celebrate. Amelia, now working as director of community outreach, stood by his side. When asked by a reporter what this moment meant to him, Elijah simply said, "It means someone," looked at me again, and then gave me the chance to look back. Later, as the crowd thinned, Nicholas approached quietly. He looked different. No designer suit, just jeans and a shirt. He held a folder in his hands. "Elijah," he said softly. Elijah turned slowly. Nicholas held out the folder. "This is a letter, and proof of a donation. I sold my condo. I've started a foundation for homeless youth. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but it's a start." Elijah looked at him, searching. And then, simply, he nodded. "Then start." Nicholas swallowed the lump in his throat. "Thank you," Amelia watched from a distance, her heart full. She had once thought heartbreak would destroy her. Instead, it had opened her. She had lost a wedding but gained a mission. She had walked away from a lie and into a calling. Elijah walked up beside her. "They say angels come in white gowns," he said, smiling. She laughed. "And sometimes they walk in with worn boots and a folded photo." They stood in the fading sunlight, the crowd behind them, the city before them.